Today, I will be taking you through 5 steps to try if your internal narrator is losing its shit. I already have them written out, which is quite exciting. And I'm going to run through them. And as you have questions, please feel free to ask. And if there's anything that could be clear or you would like to spend more time on, please share. I also love to use personal examples. So if you got one, you're trying to share, do it. Hey, everybody. So if you're just joining, this protocol is appropriate for people who are like swimming and anxious or depressive thinking. So it's just like you are stressed. Hey, Mark. You're just like stressed out of your mind. And the more that you try to soothe or work with those thoughts, like the louder and bigger they get. And this protocol can afford some immediate relief, but it's definitely something that the more you use, the more it works. And it's kind of got, it closes with an action plan for next time, which, hey, see what I'm saying? Like, it'll happen again. And just having that expectation helps you not lose your shit when it happens again, because you don't have the expectation that you shouldn't. And so we're just sort of saying like, hey, you've got a lot of momentum. It's rolling around. Hey, I miss you. You've got a lot of momentum. It's rolling it around, and we're not putting the safety or the success bar at completely stopped or stillness. We're saying like, hey, it's a little bit less though. It's a little bit less though. And we're trying to get those little bit less those to add up over time. So the first step, if you find yourself in a position where you are overwhelmed with frantic thinking that's relative to worries you might have, or actions you're not taking, or actions that somebody else might take, or just like, I think the giveaway characteristic here, the way that you know that this is something you might try, is if like all of this is so loud and clouded, you're having a hard time relaxing into an otherwise okay situation. So this is not for if you're right now is not okay. If you look around and there's some kind of threat, this is not for that. This is if you look around and you're like, shit, this moment right here is cool, but for some reason, I'm not. So the first step is to list them. And this sounds like kind of like workshoppy, and it is. It's important because you have to get them all. See what this says? It don't matter if it's whack. You probably have a lot of fears that are just fucking irrational, and you know it. You know it. And that's why you're like, well, why would I even go into it? It's crazy. I know that's not going to happen. I know that's not real. That's not possible. But if you feel it, it's going on the list. It don't matter if it whack. So step 1 is to list them. You sit down, and this is best on paper. And it's like, hey, if this thing is chasing you around all fucking day and stealing your joy and your peace of mind, don't you think it's worth like 20 minutes at a desk with your pen? It's like, hey, look, you win. Let's do it. So you sit down and you say, I'm afraid that I'll never do this. I'm afraid this will happen, and that they'll say this, and that person will do this, or that they think this, or that it means this. And you like maybe set a timer and go for 5 minutes, and maybe you have like a spurt of 4 at the beginning, and then you're like, well, I guess that's it. I'm done. I'm saying like, no, hold out for 5 and really reach for it and say like, well, what else? Even if it's whack, which it don't matter. So step 1 is to list them. And if you're just joining, I am talking to a protocol to try if you notice like this is just taking away from this in a way that doesn't make sense. So it's basically when we're doing that, we're afraid that later it's going to be hard or bad or worse or have some kind of pain, even if it's like it's ahead of us, but we're afraid because of something that happened behind us. So this is like stuff that has happened or may possibly happen or what other people are doing. Blah, blah, blah. It's like not right here. So the second step, and this sounds crazy, but it works, is to argue for it. Talk to me. So when you're seated, maybe you do these in 2 different steps. Maybe you do step 1, talk to me, or step 1, list them on one day. And if that's like the most that you can deal with that day, then you do step 2 a different day where you argue for it. And you sit down and you say like, all right, baby, I want to hear it. So like, tell me why those are real. You go down and you say like, I sincerely want you to argue for them. So you're saying like, I'm going to tell me why I should be afraid of this. I'm going to explain to me why I'm afraid of this. Sounds crazy, right? When we're trying to like ratchet down your fear. But by doing that, we are welcoming and embracing our mind, which is really at the root of this. And if we are fighting it, it's building the tension. But if we are hugging up on it, we are grounding some of it. So you argue for it and you say, well, that might be true because I saw this before and they said this, and that might be true because of this, and blah, blah, blah. And I suggest writing this out as well. Or if you want a spreadsheet for these, holler at your girl and I will throw one your way. For free. And then you can tell your friends about haveabook.com world and how it's changed yours for the better. Okay, so as you're arguing for it, you could even do it on the list where you wrote them all out. So you argue for each one and you say, okay, I believe that this is true because blah, blah, blah. When you're done with that, even the whack ones, especially the whack ones, when you're done with that, then you have step 3, which is to review that list for what's real and actionable. And then you put it in like Halloween candy bar fun sizes. So in step 3, you're revisiting the list of why you should be afraid of those things, and you're gonna highlight or underline or circle things that actually might have something that you can take action on for later. So if it's like a fear about money or a fear about health or something, you could say like, all right, I can't tackle that big thing because if I could, I woulda, and right now I can't. And so I'd ask you to reach for the fun size, the snack size, like the little bittiest thing that you could do, and you write that on the side and you put a block on it. And it's something, please choose something, like even if it doesn't seem substantial, that it is small enough that you have no resistance to it. And so that might even just be Googling something for 2 minutes. That might be breathing with the intention that it'll improve your health. It might be drinking water with the intention that it'll fill your bank account. It's saying like, I am going to take this step with the intention that it will ultimately alleviate that thing that I'm afraid of. And it's just one step in that direction. But alignment wise, now your body and your mind are saying like, hey, we're doing something about this. We're not powerless. We're doing something about it. And that's important from a relief standpoint. But if this is a law of attraction universe and quantumly organized, then it's also doing something that way. And since, I can't really say it's not, might as well include that in the work here. So if you're just joining, I'm talking to a fear protocol. Step 1 was list them all, even the whack ones. Step 2 was argue for them, go through them all and say like, okay, why might this be true? What's here for me? And step 3 is to revisit that list and look for the fun size action step that you can take, even if it seems so fucking small that it wouldn't count. If you're not sure, message me and I will help you set the bar so low that you cannot help but go over it. And again, that changes your whole mentality, because then you're like, you see me? I'm fixing it. I'm doing something about it. Hey, Brett, thank you. All right, step 4, we only have 2 more steps. Step 4 is to argue against it. And this is kind of what we're doing whenever we're trying to alleviate the tension, like the thought pressure with more thoughts. But this is actually different because we're going to look for patterns that disprove the ones that we have. So often fear originates from pain that was experienced in a small data set. So let's say like a dog bit me. That's real. That happened. Not all dogs bit me, but the way that that's organized in my mind, but might be such that I'm like, yo, avoid dogs. Those bitches bite. But they don't all bite. It's just that one. And so if you can, you want to look for in step 4 where that might not actually be true. So I do a lot of relationship coaching, and one of the things that people have going into their 30s or their 40s is that that they're concerned that they might not meet their person. And in their mind, with the data set of things that they've seen, they really believe that to be true. And so it would be for them, unless they took the time to see where it wasn't true. And so in step 4, you are looking for counter evidence. Like, really go for it and say, like, is that true everywhere? Is that really, like, for everything? Like, so it's saying, like, okay, and also. And part of making that possible might be to pretend like you're addressing that as the coolest, sane adult, you know? And so there might be somebody who's really grounded and they just kind of like, meh. They like Buddha through things and they're organized, but also have like their heart open in their dream. You kind of like pretend to be that person. And what would they say if they were arguing against it? Thanks, Brett. Actually, what I did was I wrote them the right way and then I outlined them on the back. All right, so if you guys are just joining, I am wrapping up this 5-step fear doesn't work shop protocol for step 5. So this is institute closure plan. And this is kind of saying, like I opened with, that it's reasonable to expect that if this is something that's like big enough for you to reach out to this protocol to try, that it's not going to like night and day turn away. Like it's not just going to magically stop happening to you. It will one day, but we don't want that to be our expectation, because then the next time that it happens, you're like, oh fuck, I'm going down, it didn't work, it's never gonna work, la, la, la. You're saying like, oh no, I expected this to happen. Based on the momentum that I had previously, it's reasonable to expect that I'll still lose my shit sometimes. That's okay. What was step 1 again? So step 5 in the closure plan is, I came up with this thing, I think it's cute, or it was given to me, like, it's called the fear view mirror. And it's basically saying like, when shit looks distorted and like wildly unsafe, you're probably looking through your fear view mirror, which is like not real life. And things are very scary when you look in the fear view mirror, because it doesn't seem like, it seems like psychologically or physically you're not safe. So the sub step of step 5 is to recognize when you are looking out of the fear view mirror and allow that to be a reason for you to relax just a little bit, because you know that it's not quite reality. It's a like dark, distorted version of it. And so you can kind of work with the real reality underneath. But that fear view mirror view, like you can't do shit about, because it's like phantoms and mirages. You're like, it's shadow boxing there. And so you don't want to be there. So it's part 1 of step 5 is to notice if you're looking out of the fear view mirror. And then this, again, like I know they say this everywhere for mindfulness and stress and for stress management and different kind of like trauma response techniques or like mitigation techniques, but breathe. It sounds so silly and so simple, and it's like, really, that's going to make a difference? Fuck yeah, it's going to make a difference, because you can use your physiology to cue your mental state. And so I love to put like one hand on my chest and one hand on my belly and try to like feel my organs or my spinal column or like my feet, and I just try to draw breath in real slowly, almost like if you were trying to calm a baby. And so you've got this baby and it's freaking out, and this works for babies and other people. This works for everything. All you have to do is like slow your breath. And another thing that's helpful when you're in this step is to honor your mind, like we did in step 2. And so it's saying like, what am I afraid? What is it that's circling right now? What am I afraid of? I'm going to write it down. And by allowing yourself to write it down and sincerely intending to revisit, then it kind of like loosens some of that pressure to keep it present, because it's like this life-threatening thing, which isn't really a life-threatening thing, but because of like the way our brain is organized, we think it is at that moment. It's like, this life-threatening thing needs to stay on my radar, or I'll never fix it, or I'll never escape it, or it'll get me when I'm sleepy. Like, so it's like, okay, look, hey buddy, we're here together. That's a great idea. Let me write that down. And so you can have a note in your, and you might even want to title it Fear View Mirror. And you can put the stuff that is circling. That way, when the thought comes up again, you can say, look, bro, I heard you. It's a great fucking idea. I put a note on it, and when I feel better, I'm going to go back and look at it because I want to make sure I hear what you have to say, and if there's something for me to do with it, I totally will. But right now, it's not something I can act on, and so I'm just going to put a note for later. So thank you. See what I did there? I didn't say, God damn it, Shaylee, you're scared about something you shouldn't. God damn it, Shaylee, you practiced that. You know you shouldn't be afraid. God damn. No, I just say like, oh, great, good, you're here. I knew you'd be back. Wow, that's a great thing to be afraid of. Let me make sure that I capture. So you're saying that you think that they might do this and then that would happen? Got it. And then really intend to come back to it later. You might even put a note on your calendar and do your fear view mirror review. And you can go through these same steps. And then the last one is align and act. And for align and act, it's more like you kind of it's like a surrendered posture where you're saying like, aligning to me is kind of like coming to terms for right here. It's like, okay, right here, I'm okay with this. And so you're actually like aligning yourself with life because you're not saying like, right now is wrong. And you wouldn't necessarily be yelling that, but you might instead be saying like, okay, if I do this, then I can do this later. And it's just kind of like, there's a separation between your mind and what's present. And so you might be here in this room, which represents this bottom hand, but your mind might be up here in time and space where there isn't anything it can do about shit. You can only do shit on the ground. And so for the fastest way to get on the ground, I found, and I've been looking for a minute, is to let the ground be okay. So you're saying like, if your actual surrounding is safe, and you're like looking around and you're like, actually, there's no real threat this moment, then I'm good here. And so I'm going to practice just trying to be here. So you might even envision yourself like descending into your body. You might kind of like imagine like a cookie melting outward in the oven. You just kind of like bring yourself here onto the ground. And then the act part might not be anything relative to the fear. It might be like, doing the dishes. God, chores are so fucking great to ground because they have a rhythm to them. You can try to be really good at it. You can try to be efficient. If you bring yourself into your hands and what you're doing, it makes it so much easier to get out of your mind. But if you're like, okay, no, now that I'm not doing that, now that I'm not afraid, I'm going to solve this complex problem about the universe. No. Not now. Now I'm going to do something with my hands, which might look like organizing the bookshelf or cleaning out the fork drawer, or maybe I hug something. So if you're just joining, I just finished describing the 5 steps to soothe your mind when it is in a frantic mess. And we notice or know that this might be an appropriate protocol if your immediate surroundings are okay, but you don't feel okay. And so basically means your mind is focusing on things that are don't feel good. And so basically they don't feel good because you associate them with some kind of pain, maybe past or future. Or you might be in the throes of the fear of pain. Or just kind of like the same thing because the pain's not right here. Okay, so running back through them, step 1 is to list them. And I was saying in step 1, it don't matter if it's whack. So you're going to write out all the shit you're afraid of that might go wrong, even if you know is some stupid ass shit. It doesn't matter. Especially reach for those ones. I suggested setting a timer for 5 minutes, and even if you get stuck after 2, you stay with it and you just try to say okay, but what else? Maybe there's something else. If there was something else, what would that be? Step 2 is to argue for it, which I know sounds counter, but basically you sit down with you and you say, talk to me, boo. What you got? And you kind of look at all the things you're afraid of and you say all right, tell me sincerely, I really want you to tell me why you're afraid of this. What's here for you? What would happen? What could happen? And you argue why it will. It's kind of fun because when you start to do that, you're oh, that's not and then that loses some of its power. Step 3 is to go through that list and look for what's actionable or real. And maybe there's something there for you to circle and attend to later. Maybe there is a target for you to set in that direction. If you have any kind of resistance to the task, meaning like you couldn't drop down and do it right now, that's not the right task to target. That means you got resistance and good luck. So pick something that's super, super accessible. And I suggested it being something as simple as breathing, knowing that that's good for your health. So if you're afraid about something with your health, if you're afraid about something with performance, if you're afraid about relating, if you can intend that your breath will allow for greater success in that event, it will, because you know what? It does. Step 4 is to argue against it. And here you're going to pretend to be the coolest, sane adult you know and look for why the ideas that you have aren't complete. And so that we've already said, like, all right, I hear you. Thank you so much for saying that, mind. Like, thank you, which puts you in alignment with what's happening, because if you resist you, it gets bigger. And then you want to go through it and say, like, okay, so you said that I'll never meet anybody. You said that I'll always be this. You said that this will happen. Can I think of an instance, maybe just through a friend, where that's not true? Can I think of one reason or one example where that isn't true, that disproves that that's true all the time? And or how how something else, you've overcome something else. It doesn't have to be in the same category. It could be like, well, I was afraid I would never find somewhere that I liked to live, or I thought that I would never get a new job, and lo and behold, I did. And it's sort of saying, like, okay, like, look for something that disproves the finiteness or the fatality of the earlier fear. So you're kind of saying, like, so you're saying there's a chance that it'll be okay. Step 5 is storm preparedness. And this is kind of saying, like, hey, look, it's probably likely this will happen again because I already have that pattern real strong. It's not who I am. I ain't broken. There's nothing there. It's just like a pattern that I have. No problem. I'm going to bring it to rest. So it's like you give yourself time to kind of like slow that pattern down rather than to expect that it's not going to be a thing anymore. Like, it's a thing. It's a thing. Right now it's a thing. It's okay. It's a thing. And so rather than deny that it's a thing, which makes the thing bigger and worse, you're going to try to ride it till it comes to like to nothingness. And so maybe your bar of success is like, wow, I didn't lose my shit as much as I usually lose my shit, or like I lost my shit, but then I cleaned it up faster than before, even if it's just a little bit. So we're saying, like, in step 5, like, it's okay if it happens again. If it happens again, you want to notice that you're in the fear view mirror, which is basically saying, like, I'm looking at things in a distorted, dark way. They're really not like this. And so I don't have to necessarily solve what I see in the fear view mirror. Just note that it's there. And then you can actually note what it is that you're afraid of and give yourself the freedom and permission to come back to it later, because and if your mind is like not on board with this, then it's really strong, which is great. You have a gift. And what you can do then is Google and say, like, what happens if you're in fight or flight? How is your thinking affected? And you'll find that it is. In which case, like, why would you try to problem solve from that state? That doesn't make sense. And so you give yourself the freedom to come back to what you noted as fearful in a time when you feel better. So basically, we changed the objective of that scenario to solving the problem that you're afraid might happen to making yourself feel better. You see that switch? You want to solve the problem so eventually that you feel better, but I'm saying, like, no, you got to feel better first and then you can solve the problem, which seems like a detour that wouldn't make sense, but if you haven't tried it, do, and let me know if it works. I also suggested breathing as part of your storm preparedness plan, which is get like really good at noticing when you're looking in the fear view mirror and trying to bring your awareness into your body, and then to come to acceptance with where you are by saying, like, hey, right now pretty safe, like no bears, like just had lunch, like somebody gave me a hug earlier, like guess I'm okay right now. And that helps kind of put you on the ground, which is the only place you can act or actually influence anything. I mean, arguably energetics, intention, and like how you feel and everything makes a big difference. But even just believing that you can act on the ground influences those things. And because I'm suggesting that primarily because if you're dissociated from the ground in a way that you're like very fearful, this is not the time to like add more thought. I work with a lot of people. And we do visual representations of the stuff that we're working through. So I open up a Google Draw document and we like put some of this shit in images, and even if they're just shapes or like copy and pasted pictures, we are accessing a different part of the brain. And like if your mind is already like maxed the fuck out with like stress or depressive thoughts or like anxiety or something, or guilt or shame, like why would you put more in that? Like it doesn't need more. You don't need more words, you need less, because it's like the closing in of all the reasons why you can't, or it's not safe, or that makes you feel like you're dying. It's like if you can open up the landscape and start to like realize that the limits and stuff that are holding you in are largely imaginary, then you can breathe. And when you breathe, like breathe mentally and spiritually, emotionally, whatever, you can kind of like live. All right, so that concludes the 5 steps for this protocol. Does anyone have anything they would like to talk about before I close? Yeah, that question is open, so let me know. The other thing, so here is a visual, quite advanced, for this pattern coming to close. So here's like what's happening now, where it's like, this is a shit show. Like I can't focus, I can't sleep, I can't eat, or I'm eating too much, I can't stop, or I'm not doing anything, and it's like this big tumbly ball. And again, we're not looking at success as like nothing, because that isn't reasonable. We are looking at success as sort of like this unwindingness of it until it's at stillness. And so just having the expectation that it will continue, even in just, it's gonna hurt even less and less and less each time. Like just recognizing that this is a possibility makes it so much easier when it comes up, because I think part of the difficulty when you're in a state like that is being afraid, 1, that it'll never stop, like that particular episode, or 2, that you'll have episodes like that forever. And like just that kind of like puffs it out. And so I think there are like different like puffer factors, where it's like 1 is the fear of it never stop, and like another puffer is like, what will somebody else think if they see me do this? And another puffer is like, I didn't used to do this. And another puffer would be like not sleeping or eating or being hydrated properly. And another puffer might be like not expressing fully. Like if I'm not exercising, if I'm not creating, if I'm not working, all that energy that's usually got like a door out starts to like congregate internally. And it's like, I bet you forgot you had this shit in the back. Let's talk about it. Did you remember that this was back here? Like, do you want me to grab this? Do you remember that one thing that happened that you didn't quite, like, let's go back. Let's grab that. And so then all that energy that I usually like allow for to flow through me and out is going to start to kick up shit. So once stuff's kicked up, for me anyhow, or like in clients that I work with, it's pretty hard to like kick her back down. Like through that expression, you usually have to like find some kind of like calm to even recognize that that's an opportunity for you. And then the last question, Randy, are you asking about the puffer factor? The puffer factor, I guess, it just occurred to me, is what I'm saying is like, we've got like this response. So I'm afraid about this thing that might happen, but then I'm also afraid that somebody might know that I'm having a reaction about something I'm afraid of. And that makes it bigger, because it's like, here's the thing that I'm dealing with. And then here are like, the things around it. Okay, thanks. I'm glad you said no so fast, because I would went right through it again. All right, so the last question here is, but for what? But for what? When you start to look at fear or like obsessive thinking, ask this. Like really crack this bitch open, because you will find that a lot of the shit that you think about is completely useless. And not only that, it has like a net negative effect. But we just get these patterns where we think it's a good idea to focus on a thing that's not working, or to imagine different scenarios, or have imaginary conversations, or to like revisit and analyze and understand. Oh, I will tell you, I spent years trying to understand and analyze. That doesn't change it. And also, I'm never right, because when I'm understanding, it's from one vantage point, which is with a limited data set. And so I could look at something and say like, well, that's because of this, and my mom did that, and this was for me to be able to do this. And it's like, it doesn't fucking matter. It's just like, let it be. Let it be. And all of the understanding work we ever do is to allow for that to even be on our drop-down menu, is to let it be. So it's like, skip it. It doesn't make you feel good to focus on it. You're not going to get it right because it's impossible. Express if there's anything there for you, like write about it, yell about it, sing, throw shit, like address whatever emotion is present, but try to keep your mind on the sidelines because it can't do shit there. And ask, like, when you are really fearful, like, somehow when we're in it, our brains or like ourselves are like, good idea. Let's spend as much time as possible imagining what could go wrong and how much it will suck. Let's stay here. This is a good idea. But it's not. And the more that you reinforce that by reviewing the effects or the benefits, the bennies of fear, the more easily you'll be like, when it comes up, it's so much easier to be like, oh, I hear you yelling. But for what? Because like, don't do shit except throw you off your game. Because all you can ever really do is right here, right now. So this is my space and time matrix that kind of explains where our minds can be. And if they're not right here, dead center in here and now, or ourselves, and they're somewhere else in a way that makes us feel bad, they're taken away from our ability to do shit here. So it's like even something so simple as writing. So it's like, I've been calling them focus fingers. And if you want to be a volunteer in my Hope Rehab, send me a message because I'm taking another wave soon. So in Hope Rehab, I call them focus fingers. And it's like, you got 10 focus fingers. And if your 10 focus fingers are splayed out in time and space, trying to understand that, worrying about that, thinking about what you say to them, thinking about what they're saying about you, they're not right here. The minute, the moment, the only place you can actually do shit. So it's like, call your fingers home. Like, they're like, bring them right here. This is the only place. And honestly, like, if you have experienced a moment or chronic moments where this wasn't comfortable, your ability to express or care for yourself or feel love or safety has been impoverished, like, it might be fucking hard to relax here because you don't know how. Like, if your early years had trauma or like any kind, or even like later, if this has hurt a lot, if this center point, if the moment has hurt a lot, give yourself a break. God, give yourself a break. Of course it's hard to do this. Of course it's hard to focus. Of course it's uncomfortable. Of course you're in fear. Like, give yourself a break. It's okay that you're there. And it doesn't mean you have to be there forever. It just means like, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And so basically what I'm saying is like, if you have a hard time being here, it's probably for a reason, and that's okay. And like, so we're just going to take time and practice reminding you that right here is okay. Like, right here, I'm okay. Is anyone being mean to me right now? Has anybody hurt me right now? Like, no, I'm okay right now. So I'm just going to be here. I'm going to practice being here, which can definitely, like, it can take some practice. And one way to do it is like to set, you could have like being practice every day for like 2 minutes or 5 minutes where you just kind of practice being here. And it sounds so simple, like being here, but I am here, my body's here, I'm here. It's like, if you have intense thinking, you're not here. And sometimes that happens so gradually over time that you don't notice how far away you are, or how many of your focus fingers are away. Like, after some events, like I had maybe like a finger here, but luckily it was fast. And so like, it seemed kind of like I was doing stuff, but you can notice you're not if like you're kind of sloppy in your movements, or you're not attending to balls that are important to you, or you're not caring for yourself, or you're not, or if your room is a mess or something's, or you're forgetting things, or you're not really paying attention, it's like, oh, I'm not here. I'm not here. That's okay. That's okay. I recognize that's okay. I'm not a bad person for being here. I'm not worried. I don't have to worry that I'll never be here. I don't have to be embarrassed that I'm not. I don't have to damn myself or force myself. I just have to notice that I'm not, and it's okay. And it's okay. And just in that process, you kind of lower yourself back down to the ground. You say, it's okay here. It's okay. Is it okay here? It's okay here. I'm okay. And that's it. I know I talked a lot longer than I intended today. So if this material is helpful for you, you might be a good candidate for Hope Rehab, which is a protocol that I'm developing to bypass the hamster wheel of internal development, where we're still prolonging the experience of joy until we get this part healed, or this part integrated, or that thing fixed. It's just kind of a direct pathway to feeling good, because really that's what we're trying to do in everything else. So it's like when we've dissociated like this, it's like everything we're doing up here is so that we can feel good later, because we're afraid that we won't, which is okay, because God, we probably have a reason. Even just being a human right now is enough to split you apart, because you have all this information available to you about what everybody else is doing and what it should look like, and what's going to happen after this, and oh yeah, that's a problem over there, and like, what am I going to do for retirement, and what about that shit I did that was messed up, and what about, like, it's so easy to flip up, and it's okay if you do. And it's just kind of like, yeah, I forget what I was saying, but just basically it's okay. And the fastest way to get down here is not to damn yourself for not being here, but to like comfort yourself and say like, okay, well, I could see that it's probably not that comfortable for you in the moment, what with the pressure to get everything right, and to get that done, and this done, and they're saying that, what if they say more? It's like, there's so much information, it's like crushing. And it seems like the more bandwidth you have, the more crushed or stuck you might feel, and that's okay, because that means you've got a gift, you got a lot of horsepower, and just kind of like breaking the horse in a way that doesn't like run you over. So thank you again for your attention and participation today. It was great to see you guys. Thanks, that's the idea. I was saying about Hope Rehab. So if this is something that's helpful for you, I'm taking another round of volunteers, and for that we'll talk on the phone for a week, every week for about a half hour until the tool's on your belt. And it's just kind of like presentations, like one-to-one presentations, where you tell me a little bit about what you're working through, and I'll say like, okay, let's try viewing it like this. And over time, we're just kind of like loosening the grip of the idea that you need to be in your head to feel good later, when you can only feel good now. And the way that you do that is what you focus on and the environment around you, but you can't necessarily like influence the environment from that impoverished fight or flight place. So we're just going to say like, look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you should feel shitty. Maybe it should suck. But if you want to try to see what happens if it doesn't, let me know. After that course will be available for purchase, and I'm collecting like the best visuals and examples and things that resonate with the volunteers that I have. I think I have like 8 or 10 going through it right now. And it's I'm particularly interested in supporting people who had difficult starts. And that means like you ran out of the gate after like being held behind the gate, where there was like chronic lack or chronic abuse or violence or mental or emotional threats, or any kind of like disconnect in experience where like you didn't have stability, and when you've had that as your base and then you try to build on it, it can be really overwhelming to look ahead of you and say like, oh, I still have all that before I could do this. Fuck. And with Hope Rehab, I kind of want to say like, hey, look, it's okay that you have that much. Like, you can feel good now, and then like later you'll get to that. Like, it's kind of happening, so you might as well enjoy yourself. and in that embracing of the adventure, it makes it so much easier, and it gives you the energy to attend to it, and it's so much better for your health. So much better for your health. Okay, thank you again so much for this. I will post this on YouTube for sure. If you're not following me on YouTube, it's youtube.com/The Shaylee Show, and I'll put I put most of my IG lives up there, and on patreon.com/hababook. I also have a ton of content, and there are protocols and meditations and a bunch of shit to work through. I have like at least 5 or 6 weeks of content, and I'll probably put something for this up there later if it doesn't come out on IGTV or IG as a post protocol. Thank you so much for being here and creating this feedback loop for me. Like, honest to God, like, I can't do this in a vacuum. Like, I've tried to get I'm like, all right, Shaylee, like, you need to sit down and make a program. You need to, But like, Shaylee sits down and she's like, no, like, I can't. But whenever I have this feedback loop where I'm working with people that this resonates with, it is so incredibly helpful, and I really appreciate your openness and your willingness and all the feedback. And so if you should try any of this and you get stuck and you want to troubleshoot something, send me a message. Or if you hear something and you're like, that doesn't fit what I think or know, like, I want to hear that too. Like, a lot of this is grounded in my what I call the lab, which is like this, and also in my client base, which is like amazing. And but I recognize that's not all the data, that's not all the population. So if you have anything that's like competing or conflicting or even like complementary, I definitely want to hear, and you can send me a message. So thank you again for being here for me and with me. And if this stuff resonates with you, I know you've chosen a path that's real interesting, colorful, and I respect that too, because it's a practice to learn how to like get up and go when there's a bunch of other stuff going on. So thank you for sticking to it. Okay, thank you so much again for being here, and I will talk to you soon.